Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with Season 4, Episode 6, Power Ponies. You know this one. It's the one where they get sucked into a comic book and then they have superpowers. That's the episode. It's one of the very few episodes I can just summarize in a sentence and you'll immediately know what it is. Funnily enough, I found a post on Twitter, by the Yawnmeister. He's one of the new villains. Of the thing. Shoot, hang on, let me find the post again really quick here. Did I seriously close it? Oh god, I did, didn't I? Hang on. I want to tell you the name of the person. Name's Bob? Jim Miller. There we go. By Jim Miller, who specifically stated what the inspiration was for each of the specific Power Ponies. We had Cyclops for Twilight Sparkle, Batman and Wonder Woman for Applejack, The Flash for Pinkie Pie, I'm not sure which Flash, Green Lantern for Rarity, Thor for Rainbow Dash, Hulk for Fluttershy, very obvious. And all that's pretty obvious. The one that amused me the most is specifically they wanted Robin for Spike, but the Burt Ward Robin. Now, if you don't know who that is off the top of your head, you probably know who Adam West is, and the Adam West Batman. That Robin. Yeah. Anywho. So, let me just start by saying this is a fun episode. So it's hard to analyze in the typical way because it's just fun, right? But there's still some stuff to dissect and discuss. But before we go any further, I forgot to read this on camera last episode. So last episode did have an entry in the Journal of Friendship here from Scootaloo. Rainbow Dash said I could put a journal entry since the Cutie Mark Crusaders and I just earned the honor of carrying the Ponyville flag in the Equestria Games. But we almost didn't because I was too focused on myself instead of all of us as a team. See, what makes Ponyville so special is that it's a place where Earth ponies, unicorns, and Pegasi live together as friends, like Applebloom, Sweetie Belle, and me. But when I got it in my head I wasn't a good Pegasus just because I couldn't fly, things got messed up. All I could focus on was trying to fly instead of realizing our routine was awesome already, and the abilities I had made it that awesome. I just couldn't see it that way. I thought I didn't matter because I'm different. The thing is, being different and not being able to fly aren't bad things. It's part of who I am. Plus, my friends love me for the pony I am now, not the pony I could be in the future, and that's real friendship. So it was awfully silly to run away from my teammates when they would stand by my side no matter what. And now we'll be standing by each other's sides as we carry the Ponyville flag into the Equestria Games. Now, I've already shown this off camera, but to put this in the VOD, this episode actually has an entry too. Kind of. That's the entry right there. No writing, no dialogue. It's just Spike, the brave and glorious, saving the ponies. By Spike. And that's the entry for this episode. So, Spike stays up late reading. Yeah, I've been there. I don't actually read normally nowadays. Nowadays, I tend to slide more into video games. But back when I was a voracious reader, reading late into the night was actually a pretty common activity for me, just for fun. And I got a lot of the reading I have done during that period of time. And you notice how Twilight, she hits a specific blend of I understand and sympathize, but we do need to be responsible. And I know that very well because I've had to do that many times with my niece when taking care of her. I understand you're excited, I understand you want to do this, but we need to take care of this real-life responsibility thing first, then we can have fun with it. That's pretty much the exact same thing. Yeah, I know, right, Sean? That's the exact same thing that Twilight does in this episode. We do need to be well rested for tomorrow, so I'm going to give you 2 more minutes, and then you're going to bed. Okay. So, yeah, Spike is actually portrayed as young in this episode, which is good, because, but Am I the only one who wonders why Spike doesn't have his own room at this point? Like, anyways. He also mentions his pointless red cape. I just find that funny, not only given what's happening later, but it's really amusing because there are several superheroes who have capes because... And yeah, the obvious Incredibles reference is obvious. No capes. So the episode starts its main point pretty early on. Feeling useless. That is the third time that has come up as a plot point, as a work of fiction I have analyzed this weekend. Starting to sense a trend. Starting to get worried here. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the worthless one. I guess that's not really a maybe, isn't it? But the point is that Spike obviously feels, very left out because he can't really help. And you know what? I actually completely sympathize with that. Holy new personas, Batman! Because, especially every now and again, you're just... How am I going to deal with this? I want to help, but there's nothing I can do, so I'm just going to sit here and be useless. I hate that feeling. Really hate that feeling. Now, at least everyone's pretty cool. They're just like, no, they don't say, no, you're worthless, Spike, and nobody loves you, and everyone hates you. Go eat worms. They don't do that. Instead, what they do... Yeah, no comments of it. Instead, what they do is they just say, it's okay, we got this. No worries. We got this. Oh, yeah, speaking of which, there's actually a continuity counter. I actually think I already wrote it down on the local thing, which I did. Which I need to update the live one there. There we go. Making sure. While I'm here, as much as I hate to, we're going to have to add a rarity crush and probably a wah-wah, but we'll debate those in a minute here. Anywho. So, give me a second. So, Spike's feeling kind of useless, but he goes through the comic, and there's this blank page, and there's this really tiny text. Now, given what we know about what this comic is, why is the text so tiny he needs a magnifying glass to read it? That's actually stupid. That's terrible design. It should just be, readable on the page to cast the spell to do what is effectively the holodeck. Because what this is basically a holonovel from Star Trek. Now, on the off chance you don't know what that is, a holonovel, which is different from a typical holodeck program, is when you plug in a story and you insert yourself as part of that story. It's what I usually refer to as Type 4 insertion. Because you specifically say, I want to... I hop into the holodeck, and I've got the holodeck running of... I don't know, Persona 4, or Persona 5, right? We'll use something we've used recently. So, we've got the Persona 5 holodeck running, and I would like to play the role of Yoshida, for example. So... Now I'm in, now I'm Yoshida, as Persona 5 plays out. That's a holonovel, okay? Can I just say I would absolutely love having this, by the way? This is another reason I want to live in the My Little Pony universe now. It's because I could go to the comic book store and buy comics where I could tier 4 insert myself into the stories. That sounds awesome. Seriously, that sounds so cool. I mean, I've been geeking out about the very concept of the holodeck since... I was 5, but oh my god. And yeah, Discord as a GM is also a thing, which will come out later. Yeah, he actually mentions it's from the Enchanted book comic book store in Canterlot, because of course. Yeah, I'd have the same reaction Pinkie did. You'll notice everyone else is like, no! You'll also notice we again see the new animation quality as everyone's being pulled in. And then Pinkie just jumps in. Whee! Because of course she does. But yeah, in my notes, as I'm writing down over here, in all caps, I said I would absolutely love this type of thing. Oh my god. No, seriously. Do you know how much I would love to tier 4 insert myself into so many different stories? I mean, I could just go down the list, basically. You name a story that I like, I would probably like to do that in that. Do you know how much fiction I have consumed in my life? Do you know how many stories I enjoy? We might be into the 5-digit range at this point in my life. Philly second. Yeah, I like that too. So anyways, so they hop in and they have the power. And so, oh my god, they've all got these powers. This is where the Spike crush comes in, because he's, oh, Rarity, you're... I don't remember what her superhero name is, but he describes her, and he describes her as that, So that's the Rarity crush. I know she's Green Lantern. Radiant, that was it, Radiant. We also have Ellen Kennedy, who joins the cast to play the Maniac. Now, Ellen Kennedy is probably someone you don't recognize, and that's fine. She mostly plays, characters like this, not major characters. But she does it a lot. If you have seen a cartoon show, there's a pretty good chance you've heard her voice. And it's just, she's very talented. She does some good stuff. And yeah, she absolutely hams it up wonderfully as the Maniac. Would just, yeah. Oh yeah, speaking of which, the Maniac is inspired by a combination of Dr. Octopus and the Joker, for those of you wondering. Pretty obvious, but I thought I'd point it out anyways. So, this is all cool. All their powers are thematically apropos. One of the things I find funny is, of all of them, Twilight actually gets depowered, if you think about it. Like, Rainbow kind of gets more powered up a little bit. And, Applejack gets a thing that can work for that. And Rarity we'll talk about in a second. Pinkie Pie we'll talk about in a second. But Twilight is a very powerful mage already. But now she can just go... Bzz. I mean, that would actually make sense, Raskor. Especially given, as I mentioned, the inspiration for her was, Cyclops. Which is just... Bzz. So, I could absolutely see that, but either way, I hate to, yeah, no kidding, I said okay. I hate to comic book geek out here, but as someone who's been a comic book geek for a while, I have to point out that the kit they have is pretty mean. They have a kit. Kit refers to the combinations of powers and abilities that define your overall power set. Kit, right? Something I refer to in game design a lot, too. Their kit is nuts. They have someone who has a psychically controlled rope. We have someone who's the Hulk. We have someone who is the Green Lantern. We have someone who is the Flash. Like, this is some high-tier people here. They're fighting against someone who is basically a combo of Doc Ock and the Joker. Now, the reason I bring this up is... they could absolutely curb stomp the Maniac. Now, they don't. Why? Well, that's obvious. Because they have no idea what they're doing. Credit to the intelligence of the writing staff. Because they have no idea what their powers are or how to use them, they suck. And they just kind of bumble around while the Maniac just watches and is amused. Which makes perfect sense. Now, that being said, I want to point out two things really quick. First of all, Spike trips on his cape, because capes suck. But it's funny, because he probably would have gotten away with stealing the ball if not for having his cape. It's almost like maybe he should have gotten rid of the damn thing. In fact, it weirds me out later on when he doesn't get rid of it. But anyways. So, this is what I like to think of as the Pokemon thing. Now, hear me out for a second. I mean, she was hungry, Sean. Any of you play Pokemon? Know Pokemon reasonably well? I do. Like, I'm not a super mega player, but I know Pokemon pretty well. Above average. So, if you were to, me, in real life, into the world of Pokemon, I'd be good. You know why? Because one of the things, fiction doesn't cover this as often as it probably should. But one of the things that I love when fiction does cover is when knowledge is an extremely useful tool. This is actually part... yeah, exactly, because I know what to use, and I know what works where and how and when, right? And yeah, exactly, Darth Tyrant. Knowledge is one of the most useful powers in just about any fictional setting. And it's rare that it's properly acknowledged as such. It comes up in The Witcher. That is absolutely true. And it comes up in a couple other things. I had another example, but I just forgot it. But because of that understanding of the setting, It's basically... I have a Lorium. That's true, Sierra Mike. I have a Lorium I call... It comes at Harry Potter. That was the other example I was going to give. If the Muggles knew about magic and how it worked, they'd crush them. Even J.K. Rowling agrees with that, although granted she probably shouldn't count since she's insane. But the Muggles would crush the Wizards if they knew what magic was and how it worked. If they had the knowledge, that's game. And that's, sniper rifle from a mile out. Ploop! So, the reason I bring this up, though, the Lorium, I have a Lorium called Vampire Ego Syndrome. Or no, that's actually the wrong Lorium. Sorry, I have another Lorium. I don't remember what it's called. Let me pull up my own website here. Did you know? You can go to lorerunner.com and click the Loriums button on the right. And it'll tell you all sorts of cool phrases and comments that I use all the time. I just can't think of this own comment because it hasn't come up lately. That's why I wanted to comment on it, because it doesn't come up all that often. Here we go. It should be Masquerade. Yep, there it is. Masquerade Theory. There it is. I was right. I know, Sierra Mike. It's crazy. So, Masquerade Theory is a concept referring to people who are more powerful, but they have to maintain the masquerade, otherwise they get overwhelmed. So named for Vampire the Masquerade. The idea there is that knowledge evens the board, right? It levels out the playing field. If you know how vampires work, if you know how werewolves work, that's why they have to maintain the masquerade, because otherwise they are screwed. Again, same general concept with the Muggles. Now, all of this is just a big talk around the idea that the episode goes out of its way to show that Spike is useful right out the gate because he has knowledge. And I credit the episode this because it's probably one of the most subtle and understated points that it makes, is that by sheer virtue of his knowledge, he is the reason that this works out. Not just, obviously, he saves the day at the end. I mean, he's the reason they even figured out how to use their powers to begin with. He's the one who's like, this is how this works, and this goes this way, and yada, 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 right? So, he is automatically useful from the starting line. And I think that was a very well done thing. I like that. I also have to mention one thing. This is not the last time MLP will address this concept, because the idea of having a coordinator, someone who has the skill or know-how to know what to use how, which is, in other words, knowledge, is actually going to be a major thread when we get to the Pony of Shadows. That's all I'm going to say about that. But we'll get there. I just wanted to mention it because it's another connecting thread here. Anyways. That's true. It also already came up in Winter Wrap-Up. I forgot about that. You're right, Savacom. But yeah, mental note. Pony of Shadows. It's going to be a couple seasons from now. Just lodge that in the back of your mind somewhere. So, first time I watched this episode, I noticed this. But this time I was paying very close attention, and I noticed it even more. I love how Pinkie Pie and Rarity immediately figure out how to use their powers, with basically no real input from other people. I mean, obviously Spike's like, make something useful! But other than that one trip-up, Rarity completely has total control over the Green Lantern powers, constantly. She is so on top of things, and I love it. Because, of course, someone that creative and that mentally focused and driven, who is an artist, who is already used to maintaining mental control over magical things, would be able to immediately be like, oh, yeah, okay. And, yeah, she immediately starts doing very complex and very convoluted constructs with her powers. AJ picks it up a little bit slower, but she does pick it up at all because, you know, she's used to using a lasso anyways. Pinkie, I shouldn't even have to explain that. Pinkie literally does have super speed as part of her kit in real life. And that I don't think that's actually been established yet in a non-joking way, but it will be established in the future in a non-joking way. In the time travel episode, at the very latest. So again, Of course she knows how to go quickly. Duh. Twilight takes forever. She is by far the slowest person, not counting Hulk. She is by far the slowest person to figure out how to use her powers. Because Twilight, as I mentioned, was depowered. And all she can do is shoot out the random thing. And yeah, she doesn't have a rule book. She doesn't learn this way. It takes until the very end of the episode where she finally manages to do anything useful at all. Yeah, I'm trying to picture... I'm not even sure there's a real-life equivalent of that. I guess it would be like if you're a really good bicyclist, but have never driven a car in your life, and were then told to run a race in a car. I think that's the closest real-life equivalent I could come up to that. So it takes Twilight forever to get adjusted to this. Yeah, actually, so I use a fictional example. She's a wizard who became a sorcerer, which is, if you don't understand, a wizard learns magic through book knowledge. There's a specific pattern, and they say specific words, use specific items in a specific way to cast a spell. And a sorcerer pulls out the magical energy from within them that they have innately, thanks to the way they were born, and then shoots it out as a spell without any prep work. Just whoosh. So, either way, my point, I'm not making fun, quite the contrary. This is all awesome. It's really, really well done, the way they do each of them and the way they adapt to their powers. Rainbow Dash, I forgot about her. Rainbow Dash, it takes her a while to figure out what the heck she's doing because she has to use this tool in order to accomplish things. Rainbow Dash generally doesn't use tools, if you paid attention. She's the self type. She can move clouds in real life, but here she has to grab this little lightning thing and make some lightning or something. I don't know. Takes her a while to get used to it too. So instead, now she's making these little tornadoes. So then what we have is basically an episode of Power Rangers. I don't know if that was deliberate. Let me explain that for a second. For those of you who never actually watched Power Rangers, at least the old stuff, I haven't watched Power Rangers since the Rita Repulsa era. The way it worked is there was an extremely typical pattern. So the first an amazing song plays. It's still a good song to this very day. First they're like, okay, we've got to fight. And then a bunch of low-level Mook minions fight. And then they defeat the Mook minions. But then the real boss shows up, which is usually the Make My Monster Grow step. And then they lose to that boss. Then they power up. Then they beat the boss. And that's the pattern. It got a little old, like all such patterns do. But that's totally what happens here. The Mooks come out and they just sweep the floor with them. And then the Maniac comes out and immediately defeats them. And then later on, they sweep the floor with the minions again. I'll get that in just a second. I'm getting a little too much in front of myself here. Yeah, because the next thing that happens is the egg timer refreeze. Can I just say I love how hilariously mundane the Hairspray of Doom egg timer is? That's great. Every time I see that. Oh. There we go. Goes back to his book. I could just... And yeah, it's actually smart application. It's hysterical. I mean, at some point you're going to run out, but they only need them to be there for a little bit. This is when they find out about Maniac's big evil plan. Her plan is she's going to make everyone's mains go out of control. I've read comics. So I know that supervillain plans can get really, really stupid. But yeah, that's straight up Golden Age right there. That is straight up. Anyways, moving on. So there's this bit earlier on where, Spike's feeling useless because he's humdrum. And he's already been worried about being useless. He even steps into the bucket a second time. Part of the episode doesn't have much of an Aesop, really. It's nowhere near as heavy-hitting, emotionally impacting as the last episode we just covered. But What, you mean like making a bunch of crystals grow so you can sell it as land, Mr. Red? But I do like how Spike's overall point comes basically full circle, that, you know, he's not useless. That he's, you know, he's actually worth a damn. And it's interesting to note that, yeah, Superman Returns, Mr. Red. It's interesting to note that pretty much the moment that he accepts that he's not useless, he instantly comes up with a plan. Because of course he does. As we already said, he's got the knowledge. And I like how... I'd like to say this is intentional, because I like how the moment he loses that self-worth problem, he is immediately competent, because he was already competent. If it wasn't for the fact that Spike was already feeling useless out there, out in the real world, on that particular day, he probably would have just blazed through this. But instead, he happened to be hitting a low spot, which not only makes sense for a human being regardless, but especially for a kid. But I mean, honestly, how many of you have had those days where you just... You know? So, there's this really great moment. I actually had to rewind to double catch this. There's this bit where a bunch of the so they're beating the crap out of the mooks. Rarity makes a staircase to Branstown, because of course she does. And yeah, no kidding, Mr. Red. It's one of the things I like about the show. And a bunch of the mooks are running away to the door, and as they're running around, there's this flash of Pinkie Pie going by, and in the next shot, we see one of the mooks is suddenly covered in cupcakes. It's like a half a second, and I was just like, wait, and that's why I had to rewind and double watch, and yeah, nope, he's covered in cupcakes. Surprised she would waste the cupcakes that way. So, you know, he's covered in cupcakes. But no, you'll notice that they're still beating the mooks. They haven't actually fought the Maniac yet. Now, the reason why is obvious. It's because they need to show off the Hulk. And once again, the Hulk is portrayed as the nuclear option, as he usually is in just about any work that he's in. Hulk, smash. Kong, 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 and that's the end of that. So yeah, Flutter Hulk just absolutely crushes the Maniac and her super beam, even after being shot by it, because of course the Hulk could just shrug that off. Why couldn't he? She. So they beat the Maniac, and they get sucked out, and Pinkie Pie has cupcakes, and they're like, what? And I love her line, we had a good half second before we were sucked out. Yeah, that's that's why flash powers are overpowered as hell in just about any setting. If you have the ability to go super speed, you're nuts. Right there. Also, I could talk at length about the fact that they took magically illusioned cupcakes and basically pulled them out of the holodeck. Let's not talk about that. Let's just leave that at the door. Let's walk away from that one. And yeah, I agree, SA2K. Wally would go for the cupcakes. That's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. You know what's funny, Savacom? Okay, you want me to talk about the cupcakes. In World of Warcraft, that is to say, in Azeroth, the setting of Azeroth, it is actually a thing in lore that mages can conjure food. Now, obviously, mages, the class, have the ability to conjure food, which you can use in-game. But no, that is a lore thing. They do have the ability to make food directly out of arcane energy. And it's apparently very difficult to do. In fact, most mage food is apparently basically bland. You know, it's like bread. But because basically, there are some mages who are really, really good at it, who can actually make legitimately enjoyable meals and treats directly out of arcane magic. Now, having said that, how hard would it be to believe that within the setting of MLP there are magical spells in order to produce food out of magic directly? And it's probably pretty hard to do, and yabbity flibbity flabbity flu, and you get the idea. But my point being, that's not that much of a step off of believability from what we've seen, in my opinion at least. Just shook. So, Pinkie Pie grabbing food there. Yeah, no, okay, I'm with it, sure. Either way, I already mentioned this, but unfortunately, this episode does get a wah-wah, because at the end of the episode, you know, I didn't know they were literally enchanted. Really? Now, that being said, I did have one last topic, and then I need to get grocery shopping. In fact, I just realized I haven't even responded to my mother. Yes, the power came back. Don't worry, period. I'm about to go grocery shopping myself, period. So, I'd like to think that this isn't a commonality. So, it takes some mental wrangling to make this make sense. But the idea here is that there's this... We already know Spike is well connected with Canterlot. That's nothing new. That is a well-established fact in universe. That's not theory. So the idea that Spike happens to know the one comic book store that actually sells actually enchanted comics and is willing to sell them to him, okay, that doesn't actually... That tracks, right? There's no big issues there. The fact that he doesn't know that they're that enchanted, that bothers me a little bit. And then there's the added fact that this would basically hypothesize the idea that there's got to be like a normal version of this issue somewhere, right? Like someone over there has an actual version of the comic that they can read and just go through. However, you'll notice at the end of the episode, the comic vanishes. Now, I don't know if this ever comes up again. It doesn't in anything I've seen. But this leads me to think one of two things. One, basically you rent out the comic. You know, like renting a DVD or a movie or whatever. You play through it. You know, you experience it. Then it returns to the place, and then they can then rent it out to someone else. Which is my personal headcanon, by the way, because that makes the most sense. Or someone else did this. And let's just be honest, it's probably Discord. Now, the only reason I don't buy that is because there's no reason to keep quiet about that if they wanted to go that route. There are so many ways they could have had Discord be the one behind this if they wanted to do that. And this is totally the kind of thing that he would do. And yeah, basically there's no reason to be coy about it, is what I'm trying to say. Now, that's a shame, SA2K. That minor complaint aside, I do have to say I like this episode quite a bit. It is fun. It's well-designed fun. It's in-universe fun. I'm not sure I can give this one a red rating, because it really is, at the end of the day, just fun. But I do think this episode deserves to be an orange. Now, yeah, exactly, Nimi. That being said, I looked at the writers, plural. This episode was written by Betsy McGowan, Megan McCarthy, and Charlotte Fullerton. I don't know who gets credit more or less, and I don't care, so I'm just going to give all three of them equal credit on that one. I keep using different shades of orange. Orange. That's brown. That's not orange. Lying to me, game. There we go. Damn right, Lord Harriman. Fun is insufficient. All life must serve a function. No, I'm kidding. But really, I think this is an above-average episode. It's good. I'm with it. Which is funny. This is Betsy McGowan's first episode. So, one orange. Megan McCarthy has a lot of red in her thing. Now, this is funny, though. Charlotte Fullerton is almost entirely orange. Almost every episode she's done is orange, including this one. I just find that funny. Either way, that is it. Oh, wait. Let me read the friendship journal for this episode. Okay, so there's Pinkie Pie, and she's like, oh no, what will I do? And Spike's like, I will save you. And there's no dialogue here, so I'm just making it up. But it's funny that it's literally Applejack and Pinkie Pie are the two he drew who needed his help. Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to chop off here.